For the past 30 days, I've shut down my Windows PC and I've forced myself to use Linux. Specifically, Ubuntu 26.04 LTS, the Resolute Raccoon edition. No dual boot, no safety net, and no more I'll hop onto Windows for one last thing. The goal of this month was to find out if a normal person like myself, bit of a gamer, bit of a content creator, someone who normally lives in their PC, can survive on Linux in 2026. Let's get into it. So, first impressions, installing Ubuntu was shockingly easy. Honestly, it's way easier than actually installing Windows. You download the ISO, you flash it onto a USB drive using something like Rufus, and 15 minutes later, you're staring at a brand new clean desktop. And I'll be honest, it is clean looking. The default Ubuntu desktop is modern, it's snappy, and my old hardware actually ran it pretty fast. Actually, way faster than my Windows machine would have been running on it then as well. The App Store or the Software Center lets you install most things with just one click. No more hunting for sketchy third-party download sites. It's a win straight out of the gate. Also, my graphics card and everything else in my system, the drivers for that automatically installed. I didn't have to hunt for a thing. But the real test isn't whether it looks nice, it's whether it can actually do my daily tasks. So I've made a checklist of every app that I rely on. Let's see how I survived. Now let's start with the stuff that just worked. First off, WhatsApp. Now there is no official native WhatsApp app, but there is a great community client and WhatsApp Web runs perfectly in the browser. I actually installed a wrapper app that puts it onto the taskbar like a native application as well. So honestly, I didn't miss the Windows version at all. You would think you were actually using it. Secondly, OBS Studio, which I'm using to record this right now. This is for recording all my videos, and this one is an absolute no-brainer. OBS is actually built with Linux support in mind. So recording, streaming, scene switching, all flawless. And actually, in some cases, Linux uses far less resources, that kind of thing. So my recordings were probably smoother than they would have been on Windows. Content creators, you're in safe hands here. Now, thirdly, Steam. And this is a big one. Steam on Linux is now fantastic thanks to a tool called Proton. It's the compatibility layer magic that lets Windows games run seamlessly on Linux. I'll go into a much deeper gaming section in a wee bit, but installing Steam itself, one click, done. So far, so good. But this is where things get a little complicated. Gaming on Linux has come a long way, mostly because of the Steam Deck pushing this forward. Most of my Steam library just worked. I'd hit play, Proton would do its thing, and I was gaming. There's even a website called ProtonDB where people rate how well each game runs. I basically refer to that website all the time throughout that month. But, and this is a big but, anti-cheat is a killer on Linux systems. A lot of really competitive online multiplayer games with kernel level anti-cheat just flat out refuse to run on Linux. Some developers have enabled Linux's support, but many don't. And so it was really sort of sketchy which would and which would not work. And then there's Xbox, and this is where I hit a bit of a wall. The Xbox app and the Microsoft Store ecosystem, Game Pass PC games are not natively supported on Linux. Now, there is a workaround, and it's called Xbox Cloud Gaming through the browser. And honestly, it worked better than I expected. I had used it in the past on my tablet. As long as you had a decent internet connection, I could stream Xbox Game Pass right to Firefox or Chromium. It's not perfect. There is some latency at times, but it's a legit solution. So gaming is a mostly yes, with some painful exceptions on Linux. Now here's where I, as a YouTuber, got nervous. My editing software, I use CapCut Pro, and there is no Linux native version for this. I tried running through some compatibility layers like wine and bottles, and it was rough. Crashes, missing features, it didn't connect to the internet correctly, just not reliable enough to actually work for me. So I had two options. Use the web version, which is limited and essentially a glorified version of the OS app, or switch to a Linux native editor. I ended up trying DaVinci Resolve, and it is actually really powerful, but there was a steep learning curve. Moving from one platform to the other, you're essentially starting from scratch again. And it's hard to say which was arguably better. It ran really well. It had some really good features to it, but I know what I like, and I like what I love. The lessons learned, sometimes the answer isn't, will my Windows app run? Sometimes it is, let's find the Linux equivalent. Now, next up was My favorite browser, Perplexity's Comet browser, essentially their AI browser. And officially this is built around Chromium. So the browser-based access did work, but the dedicated app experience isn't fully there yet on Linux. I leaned on their web version for most of my AI searching, but it's getting there and it feels really good. Lastly was Anti-Gravity, Google's new AI coding IDE. And the good news is, being a newer dev tool, there is Linux support for this. And as a code editor, it ran really well on my system. For the developers watching, a lot of dev tooling actually feels more at home on Linux than it does on Windows. And if you give it access to your kernel, it can essentially do most things that an MCP server can on your behalf. It was super powerful and I absolutely loved using it. So after 30 days, here's the real talk. These are the things that I absolutely loved about Linux. It's fast, like noticeably faster to my Windows machine. And my Windows machine was i5, 16 gig of RAM, decent GPU, sort of a decent mid-level rig. It felt brand new running Linux. Secondly, it's free, completely free. Nothing to be paid for at all. Next, no forced updates interrupting my work. I schedule my updates for when I want to do them. Also, no bloatware, no ads in my startup menu then as well. It felt fresh and it felt bespoke to me. Total control over how everything looks and feels and works. And Linux, Ubuntu has come along a massive way since I've used it in the past. It feels so modern and snappy. But it's not all good. These are the things that really frustrated me. Some apps just don't exist in Linux. They just do not exist anymore. And there's no workarounds that are any kind of way good or usable on a day-to-day basis. The anti-cheat gaming is a massive gamble if you're going to be using competitive online multiplayer gaming. Occasionally, I had to switch the terminal to fix things, which is fine for me. I'm an experienced user. I know Linux quite well. And also, the community support was always sketchy for Linux. You could find a Reddit post within a minute and it would solve your problem straight away, or you could be looking at something from 6 years ago. Using anti-gravity and an LLM, you can essentially fix 99% of your Linux Ubuntu issues almost instantly then as well. And if you do what I do, where you give it access to your kernel, it'll actually go and fix it for you. So anytime I did get stuck, anti-gravity was my greatest source of support in actually fixing that problem. But that might scare a lot of beginners off. If you're not comfortable with command line systems and using sudo to elevate your permissions to actually fix things, this might be a big off-put for somebody or the more casual users. Thirdly, the Microsoft and Apple ecosystems, they don't play nicely. They just don't exist, or they just don't want to exist on Linux systems as well. So there is a bit of a trade-off there. So here's the scoreboard. WhatsApp, absolutely. OBS, runs perfectly. Steam, very good. Gaming, mostly. There is some exceptions to it. Xbox, cloud only. CapCut, absolutely not. Perplexity Comet, web only, getting there. Anti-gravity, fantastic. So the big question, am I sticking with Linux? Honestly, for 80% of what I do, Linux not only keeps up, it was actually better than Windows. The other 20% required compromises, and I wasn't always thrilled about them. Mostly around Windows-specific applications and certain types of games. If you're a developer, a streamer, or someone who mostly browses and works in the cloud, you can switch absolutely no problem, and you will probably absolutely love the Ubuntu and Linux ecosystem. If you live in the Xbox ecosystem or you're dependent on specific Windows-only applications for your jobs, dual boot is probably the way to go for you. But here's my honest takeaway. Linux in 2026 is way more usable than people give it credit for. I went in expecting an absolute nightmare and came away genuinely impressed. If you want me to do a follow-up video, maybe on the beginner's guide to switching or a deep dive into gaming on Linux, let me know in the comments below. Drop me a like, it's always helpful, and subscribe to my channel for more of these experiments and things I get up to. I've been Dan Murphy, this is TalkTechToMe. Be good to yourselves. Bye-bye.